Hello, and welcome to Glory Be, interesting people and how they pray.
Each week, we chat with interesting people about their lives, their work, and how they pray. I'm Sharon Hannish.
And sitting in for Father Vince Fernandez, I'm Mike Malcolm. Our guest today is Monsignor Gregory Arthur Gier. Monsignor was ordained to the priesthood in 1967 for the Diocese of Oklahoma City, Tulsa. He earned his Master of Divinity from St. Thomas Seminary in Denver and holds a Master of Education from St. Louis University. He has led or taught or attended at some of Oklahoma's finest Catholic schools, including Bishop Kelly and Bishop McGinnis. And he's been the pastor of a number of schools all over the place, including Holy Family Cathedral School, Marquette, and Muskogee as well.
St. Joseph's in Muskogee, Immaculate Conception in North Tulsa.
And St. John in Bartlesville.
St. John's in Bartlesville.
So that's 5 schools there.
Yeah.
So awesome.
I was never pastor of a parish without a school.
Were you not?
Except Dewey.
When
I was at Bartlesville, I also was at Arla de Guadalupe and Dewey, and they didn't have a school. But
okay.
Their kids came to St. John's.
Right.
You know,
how far was it?
5 miles.
Oh, okay, that's easy.
So if you're going to have a mission, have it just 5 miles away.
That makes it really easy.
Yes.
So Monsignor Gier in 2011 received the Distinguished Pastor Award from the National Catholic Education Association, and he is currently the Pastor Emeritus at Holy Family Cathedral. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I tell people that emeritus is not a disease, it's a delight.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. So,
thank you.
What does it mean to be Pastor Emeritus?
Well, it means you get to do all of the things you love doing as a priest, and you don't have to do all the things that you didn't like as the CEO. That's the distinction I make.
Okay.
If I get to say Mass, I do assist with funerals, I do weddings, I hear confessions, I do baptisms, and if there's no collection on Sunday, it's too bad.
No, yes. You don't have to bear
I don't have to pay the
burden.
bills.
Yes.
I don't have to hire and fire the staff. Mm-hmm. I don't have to worry about whether or not Monsignor hiring auditorium is flooded with water. I don't have to worry about those kinds of things.
Wow.
If they're having great problems of that nature, I get in my car and go to my apartment.
Yes.
And you don't have to worry about pandemic rules, quarantines, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that, I don't have to, no, it's wonderful. The administrative part, but still, the priestly part is still very much, those of you here at St. Mary's, I'm sure, are very aware of the role that Monsignor Dornick continues to play here. He's present, he's your priest, he's your kind of grandfather person. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to refer to myself as that, but I guess I am the grandfather person at Holy Family.
Yeah. Grandfather person. Yeah. So you've been a priest for how many years?
53.
Yeah.
53. That's right, 1967. That's the year I was born.
Yes.
It's a long time
So you
ago.
should know how long that is.
So,
ago.
yeah, well, for me now it's 54.
Oh, okay.
Sadly.
Yeah.
So, you had this vocation. Can you talk about your vocation story? When did you always know you wanted to be a priest, or did you grow up Catholic? Tell us about that.
I grew up very Catholic. My mother was an Irish Catholic product, and my father was a German Catholic product. And so I grew up very much in those two Catholic traditions. And, ethnically you have different saints and different devotions and all that come from that. So from the fact that I was a very small child, I had a broader view of spirituality than maybe the child who had been raised in just one ethnic situation. Mm-hmm. Like my father had tremendous devotion to St. Joseph, because St. Joseph is a big thing in Germany. And my mother was, very much Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Right.
And so those devotions were very much a part of our lives all the time. And so I grew up very Catholic. Also, excuse me, on my mother's side of the family, there is a priest, and on my father's side of the family, there's a priest. And they're both older. My cousin on my mother's side was ordained a priest 1 week before I made my first communion. So I grew up with him all my life. And his parents owned a ranch in Kansas. And in the summertime, I used to go to that ranch and stay 2 or 3 weeks while he was there. So, like, he's the person that taught me to swim. He's the person that taught me to ride horses. He's the person that taught me to make figure eights on the horse and all of those things. So the priest was very real in my life. He wasn't like somebody out there. He was somebody right here. So that, I think, made it easy. So I would say that from the time I was 7 until I was 17, I spent most of my time telling everybody I wasn't going to be a priest. Yeah. And so, and then by the time I graduated from McGinnis High School, at the end of my senior year, what I decided was, this is going to bother me until I settle it. Mm-hmm. So I either settle it and go on with life, or I wonder all through my life whether I should have settled it. So I went to the seminary right after graduation from McGinnis, with the idea that if this isn't supposed to be, they'll throw me out.
So diocesan priesthood was your first
yes,
inclination?
Diocesan priesthood was my first consideration, yes, and my only serious temptation to be other than diocesan would have been the Benedictine community. Yeah. When I graduated from McGinnis, I didn't have enough Latin to get into the seminary. I'd had 1 year of Latin and 2 years of Spanish at McGinnis. So you had to have 2 years of Latin to get into the seminary. So I went to a Latin summer school at Conception Abbey and got my credentials to go to the seminary. And during that time, I watched the Benedictines. I saw the Benedictines. I watched their prayer life. I saw how kind of it was very attractive. And so I spent most of my college years trying to decide whether or not to be a Benedictine or stay in the diocesan priesthood.
So when you were in seminary, was it different than it is today? So
Oh, my dear Lord.
So did you take all your classes in Latin?
Oh, thanks be to God, no. No. I was at the, what did they used to call our seminary? I was at St. Thomas Seminary in Denver, which they called the something of the West, the Playgrounds of the West or something. Yeah. It was run by the Vincentian Fathers. It was very traditional, very Thomistic theology oriented, all of that. But and officially, in the theology department, not in the college department, but in the theology department, officially our textbooks were Latin. Huh. The facts are we had English translations of everything. Mm-hmm. And the classes were taught in English, and the testing was all in English. And that was my whole life. And that was good because I have a very mild form of dyslexia, and Latin was absolutely it was a burden. Because getting all those endings right when you only see the first three letters. And that was very, very hard. So, and this, people ask me, how did you feel about the changes in the church? Well, I was ordained in 1967. When I was ordained, the Eucharistic prayer and the offertory prayers and the three orations were in Latin. Everything else in the Mass was already in English. I was ordained in May. In October, the Eucharistic prayer, the offertory, and the orations were put in English. So I had, all those like that. So I used to say that the changes in the church, and especially the elimination of the requirement for Latin public prayer, was like a personal invitation of the Lord for me to be ordained.
Just opening the doors right for you.
Any hesitation I had at all about being able to function adequately was eliminated when all of a sudden I wasn't going to have to speak publicly in Latin on a regular basis.
So when you were in the seminary, were you hearing about Vatican II? Was there talk of that? Did you?
Well, we lived through it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's so interesting. So when you said your first Mass, was your back to the people or were you facing the people?
Well, I said my first Mass at Christ the King in Oklahoma City, which was built in 1962. And it has a huge altar in the center.
Okay.
And so I said it facing the people. But as I said, at that point, the Eucharistic prayer was the Roman canon, and it was in Latin, and I had memorized that. I could do that from memory. The offertory was still in Latin, and the orations were in Latin.
Okay.
And that was facing, in fact, it was concelebrated. I had 3 or 4 priests concelebrate my first Mass with me. My pastor from Christ the King, Father Conley, Father Bill Eishoff, which is Father Eishoff's older brother. In fact, Father Paul Eishoff served my first Mass.
Wow.
Yeah, we went to grade school together.
Okay. Well, my mom went to grade school with Father Eichhoff. In fact, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. We'll talk about that off the podcast.
Oh, no, I want to talk about it on the podcast.
They were only in first grade, so for our listeners.
So that was at Rosary.
Yes.
What's your mother's maiden name?
Nathman.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So I went all the way through Rosary School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Small world.
So I should really have never thought about being a Benedictine. I should have thought about being a Dominican.
Yes.
Because they had a much snazzier habit.
So as a kid, during the changes, I mean, earlier on, way before seminary, the changes started in 1962, right? Or
For the normal world.
Okay.
The people from the Diocese of Oklahoma City and Tulsa, I remember as a senior in high school, which is 1958, 59, in the big, like an auditorium, but it wasn't. It was just 5 classrooms put together in the new school. We had Mass facing the people.
Yeah.
1959.
Okay. Well, that is so interesting.
Well, and there were indults everywhere, whether they were official or not.
Yeah.
For all the stuff that we see today.
And so when I went to seminary, I thought, oh my goodness, this is also, he was facing the wall and all that, and I'd had Mass, but I didn't have Mass facing the people in my parish church, but we did it at McGinnis.
Okay.
So you took classes in seminary on how to say Mass in the traditional Latin Mass?
No. I learned to say Mass, the parts were the way I described them.
Yeah.
And I learned to say Mass facing the people.
Yeah.
That had already happened.
So they were preparing you for...
Yeah, that had already happened. Now, my seminary was... I remember Denver was not exactly the most liberal place in the world, and Oklahoma City, Tulsa was very, very liberal. So we were told, when we went to the seminary, just be a good kid and keep your mouth shut. But I remember the auxiliary bishop of Denver coming back from the first session of the council, and he came into our refectory and he announced to us, "Gentlemen, I've just returned from the Vatican Council, and I just want to assure all of you that all those rumors you hear about the bishops not agreeing on things, and all those rumors you hear about the bishops arguing about this, that, and the other thing, that's just all not true. And also, gentlemen, don't worry. The Mass will never go to English."
Wow.
That's so...
I'm sure there were a lot of experts running around at that time.
It was hysterical. He
predictions.
was the auxiliary bishop of Denver at the time, and because the archbishop of Denver was not well enough to go. Anyway, he said, "Don't worry about that. That isn't going to happen. That isn't going to happen." Well, we all kind of sat there and went, "You don't read the same material I read." So anyway, that would have been the mindset in the Archdiocese of Denver at the time. And of course, the seminary was owned by them and run by them. So we maintained kind of that. But as far as the instruction was concerned, I knew how to say Mass. That's why I practiced Mass and everything.
Okay.
But it was still Latin enough. I should never put this on a podcast. I had to take my Latin exam. Had to take my Mass exam over again because when I prayed the canon, I said ipsis instead of ipsis. I put the accent on the wrong
So
side.
you could flunk an exam because of that. You had to retake, you said?
I had to retake my Mass exam because I said ipsis instead of ipsis. Because the accent is never on the last syllable in Latin.
Wow. Well,
God bless them and keep them.
God bless them and keep them.
Obviously, I passed.
Yeah, obviously. Here you are. And you
50-some years later.
So you talked about how you went to Rosary and then McGinnis, and then you went on to seminary. So Catholic schools have been a big part of your story. And now, I think of you, and especially in our description, as someone who has been very much involved in schooling Catholic schools throughout your whole priesthood.
You might say that.
Tell me, what is it about Catholic schools, that you think is so valuable? Why are they so important?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's really, I think, very, very simple. One of the great joys of Catholic education is that we are allowed in the Catholic atmosphere to teach our children that they are created by a loving God, that they have a purpose that God created them for a reason, and that God would hope that they would fulfill that reason, and that God loves them enough that if they mess up, they do not have to remain all their lives caught in whatever that mess up is, that God sent them the Lord Jesus to forgive their sins and invite them back into a loving relationship with God. We can teach that in Catholic schools. You can't teach that in public schools. And that's what I've always considered to be the reason we're here, is so when our children graduate from our schools, they have a sense of their of their purpose, of their well-being, of being profoundly loved by God. And hopefully, maybe we've even taught them how to love God.
Yeah.
But the main thing is that they leave understanding, I'm not just an accident of history. I am not something that might have happened in the cosmos. I am the intention of a loving God. That's basic Catholic theology.
Yeah.
It's Baltimore Catechism, first chapter. Who made you? Why did God make you? To know, love, and serve him in this life, be happy with him forever in the next. And we have to teach that in many different ways, but that's the point of a Catholic school in my mind. So, anyway.
I love that. And we've, of course, our kids have all gone to St. Mary's and on to Bishop Kelly, and I know that, I hope, too, that they have that sense that whatever they choose as they journey out into the big world, they know they're loved by God.
And I think that's a real, hopefully we instill in the depths of their heart and soul that understanding. They may not always be able to function with it. They may not always act according to it, but it's there in the mindset. I think even the most virulent anti-Catholic child raised in the Catholic school, the one that was, I was raised Catholic. I love that one. I was raised Catholic. That crowd has within their soul, way deep down, if I die, I will not be annihilated. If I die, there is someone who created me. And if I die, maybe I'll even have eternal life. I think that functions in the heart of anybody who's hopefully been through Catholic education, no matter what their lifestyle might be.
Yeah.
I love that reminder.
Well, this podcast does two things. It's called Glory Be Interesting People and How They Pray. We have established firmly that you are interesting. And we have not even scratched the surface. But we also have established that you pray from time to time.
At least, yes, at Mass.
Yeah. Well, and specifically, that's kind of what I'm interested in, because had you become a Benedictine, you would have been woken up by monastery bells
Marvelous
somewhere.
monastery bells ringing. It just
Not so marvelous at 4:30 in the morning, but you'd be up at praying the hours, and it's very regimented from that and structured from that standpoint. But the life of a diocesan priest is probably anything but structured, because you can get called away to the hospital at any time, 3 a.m.
I've been there 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and that there's the Orpheum or the Orpheus Lounge in downtown Tulsa, which is down on about 2nd or 3rd, I think, and just off of Denver.
Yeah.
And somebody said something about, I said, well, I've spent time in the Orpheus Lounge. And they go, really? 3 o'clock in the morning, anointing someone who's just died.
Oh,
wow.
When I was an assistant, when I taught at Bishop Kelly and lived, the first year that I taught at Bishop Kelly, I lived at Holy Family. And I got an emergency call like at 2 or 3 in the morning, and I had to find out where the Orpheus.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's right across the street from the old Coney Islander.
Oh, sure.
Down there.
Sure.
And I can remember going in there, and the lady at the bar, whose boyfriend had just died, said, "Oh, Father, thank you so much for coming. He always made me promise I would get a priest if he died."
Wow.
Again, Catholic school, probably. Yeah. He always made me promise I would get a priest if he died. Thank you so much for coming.
So your vocation helps you to encounter people at random points in their lives.
Yes.
And to kind of create
Anybody.
prayerful...
Anybody.
Yeah. And if at the Orpheum Lounge, if you can make that into a prayerful space temporarily, I mean, that's a special skill. How do you do that?
Well, you thank them for calling you. You appreciate the fact that they had this much concern for this person, and you say, now may I perform our rituals? And you ask them to do. You're perfectly welcome to stay and pray with me, or some of the prayers you will understand, and some of the prayers you will have had in your own life. Let's always say the Our Father in there someplace. And you invite them to come and be with you in this moment for the sake of this person that they know. And usually they do.
Yeah.
No, I don't anoint people in the Orpheum Lounge every week.
Right.
It really wasn't. Let's say it was an eye opener.
Yeah.
Yes, welcome to the priesthood.
Yeah. I'd been ordained 4 years by that time. When I came to Tulsa, I'd already been ordained 4 years.
So you've spent a lot of time facilitating prayer in other people, whether it's saying mass at the parish or anointing somebody at a random bar at a random time. How does that impact your personal prayer? How do you make time for you?
Well, I think that's always a problem for the diocesan priest, because you really don't have in many ways you don't have the ability to always just have private time prayer. A lot of your priests get up real early and do that. Well, as Michael can tell you, I'm not a real early person. I'm a real late person. So often my most profound prayer time, it's just so funny, Monsignor Dorney and I always used to laugh about this. When Monsignor Dorney is in bed and asleep, I'm sometimes saying my morning prayers. And when he's up saying his morning prayers, I'm sound asleep. So and we've had that all of our lives. We were hysterical when we were together in the same parish for a little while. But I think it is important that we have time and we have some space to ourselves. And the kind of person I am, often that is later at night, but it's quiet and it's alone time. And often it is when I have time to say my office and say all those prayers. So I think that's a very important part of our life, that we have this private time. And that's working very beautifully in my retirement, because I live in a very lovely place. So I have a balcony. And so I can walk my balcony at night, and one of the great joys of the breviary on your phone is that it lights up.
Yeah.
So you can even walk in the dark and pray your prayers, and it's really it's lovely to pray looking down over the whole city. And as I look at it, I have a north and an east view on my balcony, so I can look straight out at Holy Family Cathedral. And then from the eastern view, I look straight out over St. John's Hospital and Utica Square, which is Christ the King, Perry. And so I'm up high enough. I always say, I can pray over Holy Family, and I can pray over Christ the King. And I'm up high enough. I can look down and I go, but not that house and not that house. I say that jokingly.
Of course, yeah.
Usually I look down and say, especially that house, especially that house.
They need two prayers.
But I don't know if I'm getting, but I think you do have to have some quiet time. And I'm very gregarious and I'm very extroverted. But I also have a contemplative side. And at one point in my priesthood, in fact, just before I did Vision 89 at Christ the King, I spent 6 weeks in a Trappist monastery because I just needed to go and have alone time with God. And it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And it has affected everything I've done since then, as a matter of fact. And I didn't go to become a Trappist. I went to deepen my own contemplative prayer life. And the consequence of that is that I really kind of learned to be somewhat contemplative no matter where I am and what's going on. You become into a deeper, much deeper awareness of the presence and the power of God within your soul in a really extended contemplative prayer time. And that was very, very good for me. And it was especially good because it was part of what strengthened me and enabled me to go through all that business with my nephew's trial and execution and all that business. I would never have made that had I not really had a sense of that, not so much being in the presence of God as God being in my presence.
Yeah.
We always talk about being in the presence of God, being in the presence of God. Well, one of the great joys of contemplative prayer is that you come to an awareness that God's in your presence in a whole different sense than just being before God. That he's there functioning in your heart and soul. And one of the great examples of that during all that business was, everybody knows who Sister Jacinta Dorado is, who one of the great ladies at Monte Cassino. And she was a dear, dear friend. And through all of that time, when things were really, really, really rough, God had a way of making sure that she was one of the people walking beside me. And she would always, during this, this was actually at the clemency hearing that she did this a couple of times. She would walk up behind me and she would tug at my coat. And I'm sure there's 1,000 people in this town going to hear this, and they'll go, I remember when she did that to me. Because there's so many people who have experienced Jacinta. But she would come up and she would tug on my coat and she would say, God is in this. God is in this. Yeah. God is in this. I used to think, some people are sent angels. I was sent Jacinta Toronto. Yeah. But it was a powerful moment. It really was. Yeah. It was reinforced by that 6 weeks of kind of learning how to allow God to be in my presence. Yeah.
If you had one tip kind of to share with our listeners of how to do contemplative prayer, when you talk about contemplative prayer, in case they don't know what that means, when you say you're doing contemplative prayer, what do you do, or what would you suggest of sort of?
Well, I think, and in this town, luckily, we have some experience with this. The best way that I go into really deep contemplative prayer is through Lectio Divina. You're looking at the Scriptures, praying the Scriptures, allowing the Scripture to talk to me. And that's one of the wonderful things about being a diocesan priest, because every day you have Mass. And you've got 2 Scriptures you better know and understand when you walk to the pulpit. And for me, that helps me, because I'm a very, in that sense, Michael can tell you, I'm very practical. Yeah. And so a lot of my prayer comes out of the daily readings of the Mass, because I have to have that ready. I have to have something hopefully meaningful to say. And so, that is one of the impetus to pray, is to do that. But I think one of the most important things about any prayer, and I get this from 2 great saints, is that we learn somehow to be fundamentally and just basically honest with God about where we are and who we are. Mm-hmm. That we are absolutely bedrock straightforward. We don't have to be afraid to tell God, I am really upset with you. We don't have to be afraid to tell God, I'm really in desperate need. Come forward. He already knows it. Like, if I tell God you're mad at him, he knows. But it's hard to learn how to be that, allow that to be in his presence, and to really let go of that. And I think 2 of the great examples of that for me are the Blessed Virgin at the Annunciation, and Teresa of Avila in her prayer life. And when the Blessed Virgin encounters the angel, her first response was fear and awe. Because what's the first thing the angel said to her? Do not be afraid, Mary. I mean, he said, Hail, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Right. Well, he didn't say that because she was just sitting there not caring. She was obviously having a response. Well, if you really have a profound experience with God, you really understand that awe and fear before the presence of God. It's not scared fear. Right. It's awful, awe-inspired fear before God. And you have to kind of let that happen. But then what's the next thing the Blessed Virgin does? She says, well, we can't do that. That's not going to work. I don't have a boyfriend. I do not know man. How do you expect me to have a baby? We're not going to do that. How we can do that? And, then he assures her that it can be done. And then she says yes. We kind of think of the Blessed Virgin as, here comes the angel and here comes yes. No, there's a section in there where the angel and the Blessed Virgin have a very serious discussion about how can this be. Yeah. And that's got to be part of our prayer too. We have to have enough confidence in the Blessed Virgin to ask the same question she was able to ask.
That is awesome.
I just think that's very important.
Now, I promised that I'd get you completed with the podcast out of here in time to get up to the cathedral to say Mass and hear confessions before.
What a nice idea.
So here's the lightning round. If you could have our whole worldwide audience, dozens and dozens of people, to join you.
Maybe thousands after they hear your guess.
All 4 people that are listening.
Yes. And if they could all join you for one intention, if you could really have the whole world join you in a single prayer intention, what would that be?
Oh. Well, I guess that all kind of goes together. If we could just really pray that all of us in the world become aware of God's presence with us, that we are not alone, that this is part of a design of a loving God, and we could pray to have that awareness ever deepen in our hearts and our souls and our minds.
That's beautiful.
I think we would live a whole lot better lives together.
I love that.
Monsignor Gier, would you close us out with a Glory Be?
If I can remember, how do you say that prayer?
Even though it's Lent.
Because in Lent, I always say that the station prayer, but I'll do the Glory Be if you would like. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was
in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Glory Be is a production of the Office of Communications at the Church of St. Mary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm your producer, Mike Malcolm. See you next week.